boys will be like, shut up!
Beat him!
Oh, and then they'll see me with the cell phone cam.
To get them real fired up. They'll be like, yeah, now
Well, yeah, because the screen is like a beacon.
Right in there, right.
It's like a lighthouse. So anyway, so I challenge you, I'll challenge Brian to go into the new Star Wars movie where it's going to be jam-packed.
3D Cineplex paying $21 a head to get in.
Oh, and you got to have the bucket, the 55-gallon drum of Coke.
That cost you $100.
That's right. Right. And the which obviously is dwarfed by the bucket of, it would be like a swimming pool of popcorn. But anyway, I digress. So you stand up, you go in there, you sit in the middle, wait till it's completely jam-packed, and you don't even have to wait till the movie starts, because then it would drown out your voice. Make it when it's right at the most quietest time, when the most jam-packed, right as the opening credits are about to start. Stand up and scream, fire!
So just do it once.
And see what happens.
Do you run around?
Here would be a little bit scarier. This would be a little bit more effective. Don't go into the middle of the theater. But that's what they always say, yelling fire in the middle of a crowded theater. Forget about the middle. Kick open the door hard.
The door down there by the screen.
Well, no, you'd have to be at the top, because at the bottom you'd have to be inside. You'd have to open it from the inside.
Oh, right.
No, the top of at the outside. Kick it open and say, fire! And just see how dangerous that is. I guarantee you'd probably have to yell it a couple times. You'd probably have to say, no, for real, dude. And I'm not saying do this. Don't try to convince them.
Don't do this. Don't
do this.
Do not do this.
Don't try to convince them that the first time you yelled it was serious. Just scream it as loud as you can one time and see what happens.
I am with you now. I am with you now, and I agree 100%.
And I know why.
Nothing will happen.
I don't think anything will happen, because there has to be a credibility. There has to be more than just some nut job screaming fire. There has to be evidence of smoke. Maybe you see a little bit of a flickering of orange out the door as he kicks it open. Maybe even some crackling. Or maybe a crowd of people sprinting past the door at breakneck speed. That would be a little alarming.
Now, if you literally ran, if you kicked the door open, screaming fire, 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 ran all the way down to the screen, came all the way back up the other aisle, screaming fire the whole time, you might get people to move or question.
And if they do move, is it going to be a stampede that kills people? Because that's the whole thing about yelling fire in a crowded theater. If you cause a stampede that was not warranted, right? And by the way, if there is a fire in a crowded theater, you should yell fire in a crowded theater, right?
Right.
I mean, you might say, please, everybody, don't run, be orderly. But you're going to yell fire, right?
Right.
So what about this? You shouldn't yell fire in a crowded theater. Should I be arrested at that point because I yelled fire when there actually is? I challenge you this. If you are ever in a crowded theater that is on fire, I challenge you to let everybody die in there in a horrible fiery death. And when asked if you did anything, you look the camera right in the eye, the lens, and you say, I was raised to know that it is illegal to yell fire in a crowded theater. So I didn't.
Right.
And I let everybody die because I was taught, it's time to use a little bit of common sense. Right?
Okay, so the phrase shouting fire in a crowded theater is a popular metaphor for speech or action made for the principal purpose of creating unnecessary panic. The phrase is a paraphrasing of Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr.'s opinion in the United States Supreme Court case.
Which is how long ago?
1919, which held that the defendant's speech in opposition...
Everything was made of kindling in 1919.
The defendant, it was used as the defendant's speech in opposition to the draft during World War I was not protected under free speech on the First Amendment in the United States.
So what are you saying, that saying what dodging the draft was illegal to say?
Yes.
You shouldn't go and get drafted. That was illegal?
Which held that the defendant's speech in opposition to the draft during World War I was not protected free speech under the First Amendment.
Literally, you weren't allowed to protest a draft?
It's World War I.
So? We weren't even... were we attacked?
Well, it's sinking of Lusitania.
Oh, well, yeah. Was that a false flag?
Was it?
I'm not even going to put on the...
They said there was stuff in the bottom of that.
In the bottom of what?
The Lusitania.
Like the explosives?
The passenger ship.
It was probably thermite. Clearly. There wasn't even a Lusitania. It was just a headline. It was wagging the dog.
Oh, wow.
Nobody died. Oh, anyway. No, and that's what the conspiracy theorists would say. But, so there was an argument. You're telling me that there was an argument in the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Against somebody who was criminally charged for protesting a draft, and his defense was, well, it's protected by the First Amendment, and they successfully...
the paraphrasing does not generally include, but does usually imply the word falsely. Falsely shouting fire in a crowded theater, which was the original wording used by Holmes's opinion, and highlights that speech, which is dangerous and false, is not protected.
And how does that have anything to do with protesting a draft? Are you saying
as opposed to speech which is dangerous but also true?
What is so dangerous about protesting a draft?
This is a Supreme Court opinion. Yes, it's 1919.
This is proof. People listening
We've
right
been
now...
under attack for over 100 years.
Easily. This is proof that... I don't know if people... Oh, man, Brian, help me out on this one. Is humanity not intellectually prepared for the freedom that
this is going to blow your mind.
That is given to us? Because it sounds to me like the Supreme Court justices of the day back in 1919 were not smart enough to even put a coherent defense of the First Amendment together.
This is going to make blood shoot out of your eyes. You ready?
Oh, my God.
Put your eye patches on, people. Holmes, writing for the unanimous court, ruled that it was a violation of the Espionage Act in 1917 to distribute flyers opposing the draft of World War I. Holmes argued this abridgment of free speech was permissible because it presented a clear and present danger, quote, clear and present danger to the government's recruitment efforts of the war.
See, here's where they were wrong. If you were conducting espionage and that was part of it, then yes, that's illegal, but not because of the freedom of speech or lack thereof, but because you were performing espionage. So my argument is, if somebody's distributing flyers stating you should oppose the draft, I'm okay with them being investigated for espionage. I'm not okay with them being arrested because the act of protesting the draft to begin with on its face is espionage. What if I'm just some concerned citizen that let's say I oppose the war?
Well, hold on. I don't know, Carrie. I think we should have imposed this all throughout the 60s. We could have locked up all those stinking hippies that wouldn't shower.
So clearly,
and we would have a better world today, hippie free.
Well, why wasn't it applied to them?
Well,
and I'm not saying I agree with it.
No, I don't agree.
But I'm saying if it was good enough in 1919, why wasn't it good enough for the hippies?
So the whole "you can't yell fire in a crowded theater" is a misnomer that was never ruled. It was never ruling. It's like the whole.
It was a mistake on the part of idiots that were on the Supreme Court at the time.
It was his word. It was his wording, and people just said, "Oh, that's right. You can't yell fire." Okay. And so
it's become law.
It's become law because people, just like the whole thing, if you break a mirror, you have 7 years of bad luck.
So is that a law now?
It's law. It's guaranteed. You can't break a mirror.
If it's been published and written by a Supreme Court justice who's clearly an idiot.
If you spill salt, the only way to get rid of the bad luck is to take a pinch of salt and throw it over your left shoulder.
Does it have to be the salt that was actually spilled, or could it be different salt?
Oh, it better be the same salt.
Have you ever seen the movie used cars.
That sounds really familiar.
It has Kurt Russell in it.
Okay. Yes, he was a used car salesman, wasn't he?
One of the salesmen on his team was super, not suspicious, superstitious. And he made a bet against his boss.
I remember this movie, yeah.
And this is at the end of the movie. And when he realized that the bet was, if he had won, it was going to ruin his friend, he knew he had to lose the bet. I think he was betting on a football game.
Okay.
He bet on a football game. Oh, that's what it was. Kurt Russell was running for office. And in order to afford... he was going to save his used car lot. In order to save the used car lot, he put every single thing he had on this football team to win. The lucky guy, in fact, his name I think was Lucky. He bet on the other team, not realizing that his friend bet on the other team. So in order to help his friend out, he started dumping salt out everywhere
for bad luck.
Oh yeah, he was in a bar. He was in a bar, and he started pulling the cap off of every salt container and dumping it. And he set up a ladder and crawled under a ladder, and he found a black cat to throw in front of him, like all these bad luck things. But anyway, yeah, that was on used car.
That's hysterical.
He did not pinch any. But my question is, does it have to be a pinch of the salt that you actually spilt?
I think so. I think it does.
Okay.
And that comes from back in the day when salt was expensive and you didn't want the help. All these superstitions were for low information, ignorant, and I don't mean ignorant in a bad way. It's just you just didn't have any knowledge of stuff to keep the help in check. You would scare people. You scare the help by setting up superstitions. Mirrors were very expensive.
Oh, okay.
Salt was expensive.
A lot of people. Here's how expensive salt was. The word salt comes from the same root word as salary. And back in the ancient times, people would go to work for a measure of salt. And that's where the word salary came from. You went to work every day for salt.
So if it cost that much, can you imagine having the help? You bought that salt, and you're paying your help. Well, maybe you're not paying the help. Maybe it's indentured servant. And the servant knocks the salt over.
Oh, that's like taking your piggy bank and accidentally dropping it into a sewer.
Right. All the coins. So they created these superstitions. Oh, and they're fascinating. You read all about them. They create all these superstitions to keep the help in check. To scare the hell out of them.
So it's bad luck to spill the salt because you don't want to tell them that it's expensive. In fact, if you tell your help that it's expensive, they might dump it out for spite.
That's true. All right, so before we're running out of time. Let me play the Tears for Fears. That was the headline from Matt Drudge. Tears for Fears.
Okay.
Our right to peaceful assembly. That right was robbed from moviegoers in Aurora and Lafayette. Our unalienable right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, those rights were stripped from college kids in Blacksburg and Santa Barbara and from high schoolers at Columbine and from first graders in Newtown.
This is so bogus. Completely bogus.
First graders.
This logic is so just stinks.
From every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet from a gun.
This guy's such an idiot.
You understand? It's a bullet from a gun that took my life.
No, it took away their rights.
Sure did. Infringed on the other rights.
Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad.
Oh, this is the part where he's crying now.
It's not like he said it gets me men.
And by the way, it happens on the streets of Chicago every day.
He gets mad on the streets.
Oh! Wow.
Is that a Freudian slip?
So, all of us need to demand a Congress brave enough to stand up to the gun lobby's lies, All of us need to stand up and protect its
You say
citizens.
gun lobby lies?
All of us need to demand governors and legislators